The Beauty is one of the strangest horror books I've ever read. It's not even a horror. I guess it's more apocalypse fiction or like worst case scenario, future dystopia. But essentially this book is about all of the women in the world suddenly disappearing and dying off, and then from all of their bodies mushrooms grow. And it's very interesting because the author makes it so believable. It's very much like a analysis of what would happen if all the women died. So I don't know, let me read you some of the summary. Somewhere away from the cities and towns in the Valley of the Rocks, a society of men and boys gather around the fire each night to listen to their history recounted by Nate, the storyteller. Requested most often by the group is the tale of the death of all women. They are the last generation. One evening, Nate brings back new secrets from the woods. Peculiar mushrooms are growing from the ground where the women's bodies lie buried. These are the first signs of a strange and insidious presence, unlike anything ever known. Discover the beauty. A lot of people have written reviews for this book. The brilliant, gender-bending, post-apocalyptic horror fable the world needs right now. This book messed me up in the best way possible. Paul Tremblay. A story of cosmic fecundity and fungal weirdness that I couldn't put down. Adam Neville. Elegantly chilling, utterly heartbreaking. It's as a woman, it's such a jarring book to read because it's so odd. I mean, you don't want to think about your own disappearance and death, and you don't want to think about what the world would be like without all women. Like, that's crazy. But I also just love the design of the book. Like, look at this title page. I love the shadow of the mushroom, which is very much the same as the one on the cover, which is also beautiful. I love the cover of this book. And also each of the chapters has a beautiful cover page as well. It's split up really nicely. Technically, there is not even that big of a, it's not even that big of a book, because the first part of the book is the actual book. This is the book, and then there's acknowledgements, and then at the end is a short story, which is not that short, but it's just more, you know, more of the writer who's really good. And then also I love when books have a glossary, but there's a really fun glossary as well, which is also really well designed. As you probably can tell, I'm really obsessed with book design, but whatever. Let's see, are there any other? Elegantly written, balancing on the line that divides prose from poetry. That's how I felt in the book. It's very unique. Teeming with the spirit of feminist speculative trailblazers like Margaret Atwood, Ursula Le Guin, and Joanna Russ, Whiteley's original gut-wrenching tale renders a world that exists somewhere in between post-apocalyptic and fable-esque. Fable is a good thing. It feels very much like a folk tale, and I think it's because of like the storytelling nature of the book and like the men telling the stories around the campfire, but I really like that aspect. A murky delirium of sinuous language and unnerving storytelling that will delight both experienced genre fanatics and literary fiction lovers alike. I just kind of want to read you a little bit of the first page to give you a sense of what the book is about, because I think it's particularly interesting. To start, there are signs. I don't care what William says. There are signs of change, of regeneration. And I saw the first mushrooms in the graveyard on the morning after I ripped up the photograph of my mother's face and threw the pieces over the cliff into the fat, swallowing folds of the sea. Timing is everything. My name is Nathan, just 23 and given to the curation of stories. I listen, retain, then polish and release them over the fire at night, when others hush and lean forward in their desire to hear the past. They crave romance, particularly when autumn sets in and cold nights awake them. So I speak of Alice and Bethany and Sarah and Val and other dead women who all once had lustrous hair and never a bad word on their plump lips. I can remember this is not how they were. I knew them. And yet, only 6 years have passed, and yet I mythologize them as if it were 6,000. I am not culpable. Language is changing, like the earth, like the sea. We live in lonely, fateful flux, outnumbered and outgrown. Last night I spoke of Miriam. She was the teacher with a passion inside of her, always burning hot, making her ferocious. When the inspectors would climb up through the rocks from the town and tell her it was their right to judge her lessons, she would fling pieces of paper at them, plans and registers, and she would sneer, a skewed expression of her natural superiority. Then after the inspectors rode away, she would rip the papers to pieces, make celebratory confetti, and dance, and tell us to dance in it. I mean, that's what it means by like the combination of poetry and of prose, because it's like some parts of it feel so poetic, specifically like I ripped up the photograph of my mother's face and threw the pieces over the cliff into the fat, swallowing folds of the sea. I love it. It's beautiful. Language is changing, like the earth, like the sea. We live in lonely, fateful flux, outnumbered and outgrown. If you don't have patience for poetry, you might not like this book. But if you can get past the poetic element, or if you appreciate the poetic element, this is a very cool book. I found it kind of horrific because obviously I wouldn't exist in this book. But it is a nice kind of case study in like what it's like potentially to live in a world without women. Ultimately it seems very sad and lonely, but I like the idea that someone would want to write about that, and honestly I would love more from this world. It kind of reminds me of like, was it like 28 days later, 28 months later, 20 years later or whatever, because it has that kind of, this is the before and this is the after, and we're living in the after, and it's kind of really tragic. So a recommendation. Also, this is my my test makeup for I'm going to a cottagecore Ren fair this coming weekend, so I just wanted to test out the vibe. We got my mushroom for the cottagecore. Anyway, hope you look into it.